It really would be a crime to plan a 009 Talyllyn layout and not build anything from the Heritage Collection. Enter the 2-bar and 3-bar slate wagons. Iconic. Let's get to work. Hi guys. I decided that this week's prey will be these 3 kits by Dundas Models. The 2-bar slate wagon and the 3-bar slate wagon. These are ex-Rodney Stenning kits, so similar to the Corris stock that I built last series. And whilst they look like a fiddly thing to build, they aren't really any harder than the Corris stuff. This is due to the sides being formed as a single piece. Well, on the 2-bar at least. So once they are cut from the spurs, the excess plastic is lightly filed away. In all honesty, it's really only the places where they're connected that need looking at. Oh, and do not file the pips on top. These will eventually be the top bolts, and need to be left on. Don't file them off. Don't file them. Following the instructions, the ends are first attached to the floor. These kits have been designed in such a way to include a little lip on both parts, which makes an easy join. Just like that. I'm using liquid poly for this build, as it's a plastic kit. People have asked me if this is as strong as superglue. In truth, it is stronger, as instead of gluing the 2 parts together, it melts the plastic, which fuses them. Following photos of the prototype, the side bolts need adjusting, as in, remove a few of them. The Talyllyn only have 2-bar slate wagons running on the railway now, so it's easy to give each a number, and follow reference photos for that exact wagon. This particular wagon is braked, so I'm removing the bolts where the brake gear will be glued on. This needs to be done on opposite ends of each part so that they're on the same side when they're on the wagon. One thing that I have found these kits need are the axle boxes opening up with a pin drill. The wheel sets are a super tight fit, suspiciously tight, unlawfully tight. So this will put that right. It was years into my modelling career before I invested in a pin drill, but I love it like a son now. The sides can now be glued on. Make sure to get them equal between the 2 ends. And that's the second side on, nice and equal. The final part for this wagon are the dumb buffer ends. I nearly lost these when the cat lay on top of them on the workbench. Note to self, shave cat before the next build. Hang about. This one's the braked one, isn't it? In that case, the final parts are the brake housing. The brake lever and the brakes themselves won't go on until after the painting stage. So moving on to the 3-bar wagon, and this is a slightly different style of assembly. The floor is larger, and once the axle boxes are drilled to an inch of their little lives, has the frame sides glued on. That's both on now, and you can see how the floor actually includes the frame ends, unlike the 2-bar which had them attached to the body ends. However, like the 2-bar, they need the dumb buffer ends glued on, which completes the base. And here's where things get lively. The body is split into 3 sets of bars. Be careful when joining these as they're not actually identical. Look closely and you'll see that one has top bolts, which goes on top, and one has shorter pips, which goes on the bottom. To join these, carefully add liquid poly to the pips and bring the parts together. The tops of the bars actually have little dimples to locate the pips correctly. At this point, I'm not joining them to the base. So, in Williamson tradition, cotton buds are attached to the wagons. Before I start painting, I need to work out the colour. The wagons are slightly different tones of grey, so I've made this little chart using some of my closer greys. None really give me confidence, if I'm honest. Anyway, let's start with a shot of grey primer and go from there. Note how light of a dusting I give them. No need to drown the poor lad. So the first attempt is with Deco Art Amish Grey. This is almost a very pale browny grey, but it's warm, and I don't like cold greys. And here it is in comparison with the left-hand wagon, which is still in grey primer. It makes it look really dark seeing it against the Amish Grey. Keeping that in mind, I'll give a wagon a coat of miniature paints number 6 mid-grey, which is on the left here. This time I'm mixing miniature paints number 8 blue-grey with a few drops of Army Painter's Grymore purple. Whilst we wait, let me introduce you to this week's sponsor, the brilliant Dundas Models. Those of you who are familiar with 009 modelling will know these guys really well. They're basically a 009 model superstore and house not only pretty much any manufacturer of kits that you've heard of, such as Bachmann, Pico, Narrow Planet, Mercian models and so on, but also vital parts like track, fish plates, books, controllers, wheel sets and much more. The website has a nice list of manufacturers down the left hand side, so let's have a look in here. The website's really easy to use, which is good for people like me. And I love how every item has a drawing or photo of what it is, which means that you don't have to be a narrow gauge guru to see what you like. Oh look, Hex Rodney Stenning. Yay, this is what I'm using at the moment. Some kits are also available in set packs, either multiples of the same style or as a mix, such as the Talyllyn wagons. They're really helpful as well, so go take a look around the site and even get in touch with them for help if you're not sure what you need. They'll know. And thanks again to Dundas Models for sponsoring this video. So the wagons are now ready for their details to be painted. All I'm using for this are Miniature Paints black primer. This gives a nice solid black coat. The parts needed to be black are axle boxes, bolt heads, struts, brackets and the flooring. And as I said before, keep an eye on the reference photos so you know where to paint, as it can vary between the wagons and even what era you're modelling. Most parts are now black here, so I'll turn to the floor, which was tricky to paint as the sides are attached. So I tried to sort of slide the paintbrush under the side bars. It kind of worked. And this is where the build style of the 3-bar really comes into its own, as the floor is much easier to paint as the body's not attached. It'll need a second coat for a nice covering. The sides, however, are not easy to paint, due to the minimum clearance between the bars. But to be fair, it does look like I'm using a flippin' massive brush here. With the black dry, I can finally join the body to the floor. Super glue is used here as the parts are painted now. I'm going to squeeze the parts together whilst the glue sets to get every pip in contact with the floor. Final parts to go on now are the brake gear. This has had a base coat of black and is being attached with super glue. Check in reference photos to see how high to position the lever. And now the wheel sets can go in. And to be fair, even with the axle box modification, the wheel sets are still a really tight fit. So I've added a drop of oil to aid turning. So there we go. The tonal variation is clear here. It's probably not exactly right, but it looks good enough. You may have noticed that I haven't added numbers yet. I haven't found any that look right, so I'll circle back to that one day. I can't say I'm 100% happy with the finish I got on these ones, but they were really tricky to paint well, and I haven't decided on how to weather them yet, and that will help with the issue. Ah well, they're done now. I don't really sound convinced, do I? That's because I'm not. Ah, we haven't really had an ending like this before, have we? I tell you what, cheer me up and watch one of these other videos instead, will you? Thank you, friend. Cheers.